the code that controls your life. We are decoding the health matrix.
Hi everyone, it's been a little bit of a time, a lot of conferences happening, a lot of speaking engagements, and things are luckily starting to wind down, and a lot of great stuff on the horizon. One of the biggest things is a lot of younger, healthier people who are coming in and looking to do what they can to optimize their performance. So it's more than just that person who's over the age of 45 who needs help, but even the people over the age of 45 until 65, 70, depending on where they are, they're really pushing it hard. They're exercising, and all sorts of things are getting in the way of them being able to optimize their performance. So, I've had a relationship with a yoga house nearby. It's called Yoga House. And we're definitely seeing first timers coming in that are overweight and they're just trying to get in shape. And we're also talking about the people that are lifers that work out really hard and they end up having some sort of an injury that sort of sidelines them for a while, and they really don't want to lose all of that credit they've gotten under their belt for staying in shape. So, there are a lot of things that we sort of offer in this wellness realm that really changes the way people approach how they take care of their health and wellness. And so one of the things is when I'm starting to evaluate people, I'm getting in the habit now of trying to assess where they are to begin with. And that doesn't happen from just stepping on a scale and listening to a blood pressure. One of the biggest things that we do is we do the in-body composition analysis. And if you're not aware of this, it's beyond stepping on the scale and having that thing sort of like stepping on top of your head, and you figure out how tall somebody is, and then you do a calculation and you get this body mass index, which is one of the most useless, worthless measurements you can use in order to gauge where you need to go with your health. And so the in-body composition does something completely different. And there's other machines like it. But essentially what you're doing is you're sending, you're evaluating somebody's body fat composition. And not only are you evaluating fat composition, you're evaluating where it is. Is it in the upper extremities? Is it in the chest? Is it in the legs? And most importantly, is it in the abdominal cavity, the visceral fat, which is the deadly kind. And I call it deadly because it's tied to high levels of inflammation. And as I've talked about before, when you get enough things that are inflaming your system, you're opening the door for things like cardiovascular disease, cancers, and chronic autoimmune diseases to sort of come on board. So that in-body composition is a really essential piece of my workup. I make people step on that scale. I go over it with them in detail, and then I know where they need to go to get rid of fat, to increase muscle mass, and to even change the way their limbs and their torso is designed. So that's an essential piece of any kind of a plan that you come up with. The other thing is this PNOE testing. So PNOE testing is a way to actually gauge how much oxygen you're burning and how much CO2 you're burning at rest, which they call that a resting metabolic rate. And that's a great thing for people to start with when they haven't been exercising, but they're looking to change their dietary habits. But in people who are performance oriented, you really want to know their VO2 max. At what point in time is their body changing the fuel that it needs to operate? And when you know somebody's VO2 max, you know what you need to do in order to improve the VO2 max. And it turns out the higher your VO2 max is, the better your mitochondrial function, the longer you will live, because you're fighting inflammation and you're consuming oxygen in the most optimal manner. So without those two pieces of the puzzle, you don't know where to go most of the time. And I do think lab work is very important, but without those two pieces of the puzzle, you don't even know what to do with the lab work. So very important that those parts are put together. But in this realm of people that are always fighting the battle of trying to stay in good shape, what are the tools that are available? And I've talked about age-related decline of hormones, and that's a biggie for anybody over the age of 45. It really changes how you respond to exercise and dietary habits. No matter how good a shape you were in before, that part usually will catch up to you. If not, you will notice that it takes more and more work for you to be able to achieve or stay where you were before, because you're starting to do things at a deficit. You are now deficient of the things that were keeping you healthy and young. So hormone replacement therapy is definitely something to discuss. But again, that requires doing these initial evaluations and then doing blood work to figure that out. And so beyond that, then we have to talk about what is it that people are lacking. And, there's intravenous infusions that will definitely help in that regard. But peptides have been, going crazy. There isn't a social posting that I see that doesn't start touting the wonderful things related to this peptide and that peptide. And honestly, you could talk for hours about every peptide that exists. So I think I'm going to be doing that a little bit more often. I'll be talking about what peptides are out there, what they're capable of doing, and what's the best way to use them. And most importantly, how to source them without having to worry about where they're coming from, whether they're pure, whether you're actually getting what it says that you're getting. In this realm of people who exercise a lot, these regenerative peptides are really worthwhile. I'm sure everybody has heard of the Wolverine peptide, which is the BPC 157 and the TB 500, which work to heal collagen, muscle, tendon, sinew in general. And people have seen, and I have seen in my practice, tremendous recoveries that occur when people are using this stack of peptides after they're injured. I've been using it in people in preparation for their surgeries and after their surgeries, and their scarring is minimized and they recover much faster. They usually blow their surgeons away on their follow-up visits about how well they have healed in relation to other patients, and I get that story back a lot. But the other one is the soreness, right? So let's say you're a young person and you've injured yourself. These kinds of peptides are very helpful. GHK copper now is being combined with the Wolverine stack, and that's called Glow. And it has the added advantage of helping with your nails, your hair, and your skin, aside from all of the sinew recovery. And then there's KPV. KPV is a wonderful peptide that's an anti-inflammatory. So most people who have been in the sports realm, they're using steroids, they're using anti-inflammatory medications like ibuprofen, Aleve. They're using Tylenol. Crazy. Don't ever use Tylenol, by the way. So KPV is a wonderful peptide that actually goes at the root of where inflammation gets triggered and helps to dampen that. And you notice people recover rather quickly from things that usually would take them weeks to recover. And now they have combined these stacks. They've put KPV, GHK copper, TB 500, and BPC 157 into one stack, or you could take them individually. That one stack is called KLOW, K-L-O-W. So very powerful at getting people back in action and reducing inflammation. But, in my book, I've always talked about ozone. We've talked about hyperbaric oxygen therapy and how important it is for making your mitochondria work at an optimal level. And there are people that don't want to have an IV stuck in them. There are people that don't want to sit in a hyperbaric chamber for an hour. And there are peptides that will actually boost your mitochondrial function. And that's like MOTS-C and SS31. So if you're hearing these things, that's what they do. They actually boost your mitochondrial function. They actually help your mitochondria that when they are sluggish and tired, that they get cleared out of your system. And more importantly, they help to boost reproduction or production of new mitochondria, which is not an easy process. As we get older, that does seem to slow down quite a bit. It's part of what leads to our premature aging. So we should be living a lot later, a lot healthier, and these are the kinds of tools that are available aside from getting you to the point where you're eating a clean diet and you're trying to reduce your insulin levels on a regular basis, which is the source of a lot of metabolic and inflammatory disease. There's a lot of people out there, they're working out and they get sick, right? They get a cold, they get a stomach bug, and it knocks them for a loop. And we have these great peptides here that help during these kinds of acute illnesses like thymosin alpha-1 and LL37. And these are things that if I give them to people normally that would be taking 7 to 10 days to recover and then slowly returning back to their exercise routine, they're back in action within 3 days, 4 days, they're back to doing what they love to do. I do sometimes give them IV support as well with the other therapies that I usually do in my office. And but the one thing that I've been getting a lot of calls about are young people that are starting to hear about peptides and they're getting excited. They're already like in the best shape of their lives, but they want to get more muscle. They want to look more like that Hollywood person that's all cut up. And they're calling me and they're asking me, what about using CGC and ipamorelin, these growth hormone analogs, these things that stimulate your own growth hormone to be secreted? And I got to tell you, in young people, that's not a good idea because you already have the wiring in there to produce the growth hormone you need on a day-to-day basis. So young people should not really be considering growth hormone analogs like CGC and ipamorelin, samorelin, or tesamorelin. That's something you should try to avoid. I think looking at the regenerative peptides make a lot more sense, and training smarter and not necessarily harder is the best way to go. And then, of course, we have the people that are sort of in the middle age category or older, and they're having some hormonal decline. The guys especially, they might have lower testosterone levels, but they're not necessarily testosterone deficient. And there's peptides out there like kisspeptin that actually have the ability to boost your own innate production of testosterone. These kinds of peptides have also been used in women who are trying to boost their hormone levels to get better egg counts when they're trying to actually conceive. So these kinds of things are available, but the hormone peptides I'm a little bit more careful about, because you're not just impacting one sex hormone, you could be impacting testosterone, progesterone, and estradiol, which may not be desirable depending on the circumstance. But and again, IVs really play a big role when it comes to maintaining your health and optimizing your performance. I like to expose people to high doses of ozone intermittently, like the EBU therapy, where you're really giving them large doses of oxygen and anti-inflammatory impact and mitochondrial boosting impact with a therapy that literally takes about an hour. And a lot of times what guides me in terms of recommending that is going to be things like the PNOE testing and the in-body composition. And let's not forget the other peptides, the ones that everybody goes crazy for, like the Ozempics and the terzepatides and the retatrutides, these weight loss peptides. And the reality is I'm going more and more towards the non-FDA approved retatrutides because the data behind, right now they're trying to actually get it restricted. Eli Lilly is trying to actually restrict people's access to something that's being used in the wellness industry for the last 5 years. People know it's not FDA approved, and it's the triple G, right? It works on GLP-1, it works on GIP, and it also agonizes or stimulates glucagon. And because of that, it does a much better job at body fat loss. It does a much better job at weight loss. But the biggest thing that it does, better than Ozempic by far, and better than tirzepatide, is preserve muscle. And one of the biggest things that have come out of the phase 1, phase 2, and even phase 3 trials that are coming from Eli Lilly is the fact that retatrutide, this triple G agent that people are using for weight loss, also increases mitochondrial biogenesis. One of the things that I love, right? It actually increases the population of mitochondria, which basically means you have more of that machinery that produces power, fights inflammation, fights infection, and keeps you healing in a normal fashion. So lately, one of the most powerful things I've had is Shockwave. And I don't know if people have ever heard of Shockwave. In the past, you've gotten a knee injury, a shoulder injury, a muscle injury, anything like that. You're almost always out of commission. You might be doing things like the peptides. You might even be doing things like PRP injections, PRF injections, ozone, prolozone. But now Shockwave, which has been around for a while, but really I think people are starting to realize its potential. It's a machine that is capable of delivering impulses down to any part of your joint or body where you have an injury. And what it does is it actually stimulates new vessel growth. And on top of stimulating new vessel growth, it actually brings more stem cells and platelets and healing factors to the area so that I don't have to stick a needle into a space to introduce these healing compounds. You could actually bring it out yourself with what they call shockwave therapy. And what it is it's a big probe, and right in the middle of it, there's a spark plug. And that spark plug is firing at a certain rate, and it sends a pulse wave through the fluid medium that's at the bottom of this probe. And when you're contacting the area where the injury is, the people will actually tell you, that's the spot, that's the spot. And by the end of the therapy, they're going, oh my God, I can move my arm. I feel so much better. I've had people with calcific tendonitis of their shoulders, and the calcium has actually disappeared and their range of motion has returned to normal. And these people that have been working out for 3 to 5 years in pain and restricting what they've been doing, all of a sudden are making these giant gains simply because their muscle now has gotten to the point where it's not being jammed up by a tendon that's all calcified and inflamed. It's really quite impressive. And it didn't even require them getting a shot of exosomes, stem cells, or platelets. So right now, I've changed my whole approach on these things where people should be getting shockwave. At some point in time you want to get about 10 therapies of shockwave to sort of finish what's happening in that area. Most people will notice a difference almost immediately and continued improvement with each therapy. But by the time they're hitting their second or third therapy, if they're still not close to 100%, that's what I'll talk to them about peptides, like the Wolverines and the Glows and the Clos. For the people that have bad osteoarthritis, where their cartilage has been completely worn off, I even talk to them about peptides like Cartilax. And Cartilax has been shown to actually regenerate cartilage. Crazy stuff. So I've had people with thumb pains, I've had people with shoulder pains, and they go through this process, their thumb pains go away. You live to be old enough like me, you know that this is a very common area for osteoarthritis, and the pains that happen here can be not only disfiguring, but really make it hard for you to even twist a bottle open or do anything with a pen. And we're talking with a pen, even writing could be painful. And we're talking about with shockwave to this area, yeah, you could do shockwave to this area, and with things like Cartilax, all of a sudden you have motion, no pain, you could open bottles. It's really crazy. So I want to make sure that people don't go too far with things that they just accept as being part of aging, because there are a lot of things out there that are not being offered that need to be known about. And shockwave is one of those things. It's so simple, no needles, extremely non-painful, but most importantly, have people walking out satisfied that they've moved in the right direction with things. So all of these things are extremely important. And I'm going to be bringing on some people that are in this field where they're training people on a constant basis, they're running gym classes, and I want them to give the experience that those clients are telling them about, because and I have to give a warning, I guess. A lot of people go to their gym and their trainer is giving them peptides, and that's all fine and good. I'm glad that the information is getting out there, but you have to be very careful about sourcing. And if you could be assured that the sourcing is good, I do recommend peptides as part of a recovery program when people are looking to optimize their performance. But there's a lot of steps in between. And that's pretty much it. So hopefully we're decoding the health matrix a little bit more, which is what my goal is. We have a few more interesting topics coming up. One's going to be on it's going to be on endometriosis, and the reason why I'm getting involved with that topic is because there's a huge correlation with cardiovascular disease, because it's a very similar inflammatory process underneath that causes these things. So look out for that podcast coming up soon. And we're going to be doing a deep dive into total plasma exchange, a very exciting field, but a lot of questions about the safety, efficacy. And I really want to make sure that we get this information out for people who can be very ill for a variety of reasons, whether it's from a chronic autoimmune disease, whether it's recovery from some other infection, or even from long-haul COVID vaccine injuries or long-haul COVID. We're talking about some tremendous things that can be done with this kind of technology, and want to get that information out there. Hope everybody's great. Have a good day.
Welcome. We are decoding the health matrix origins, the code that controls your life.